Not that I'm muted. Not that I'm on mute and on here talking. All right, y'all. Good morning. We got a late start today. We had a little late start today. So I'm gonna get the folks a couple minutes to come on in. We only got 3 people watching us right now, so I'll give the people a few more minutes. And we will start the stream. All right. Giving them a few more minutes. Just give the folks a few more minutes. Yeah. Hello, Miss Main Event. Welcome. We just got here. We had a late start today. I had to take my son to the doctor this morning. So we're just getting ready to pick back up on closing arguments for the Ahmaud Arbery trial. The defense is up. So this is where we stopped at on yesterday. Thank you. Make sure y'all hit that like button as you come in. Y'all know I forget to say that all the time. So I appreciate you. Adventuring. So we are. Good morning, Sonya girls. What's popping? So we are an hour and 20 minutes past our normal start time. So I'm gonna kick us off because y'all know I chipped my tooth over the weekend. I ain't letting nobody forget it. So I am going to the dentist. So I think we got a nice block of time where I think we could get through closing arguments before I hit the dentist. So without further ado, we got some of our regular Taylor Gang members in here, so we will just go ahead and get started.
All right, with the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a short recess. Let's go ahead and take a 15-minute recess, and then we'll come back for the continuation of closing arguments. Again, do not discuss this case amongst yourselves until all of the closing arguments have been made and you have received the final charge of the court.
Evidence or not part of the evidence, and then I think there was a diagram that no one testified to. So having only seen 4 or 5 of them, and I get somebody writing some stuff down, maybe on use of force continuum, and then here's the different levels, because Travis testified to that. There appears to be some sort of use of force diagram that no one testified to or authenticated. There seems to be a picture of the entrance to Satilla Shores, and then there's a photograph of like U.S. Marine or the U.S. Coast Guard symbol, which is what I quickly saw. So right now, Your Honor, I don't know what Mr. Sheffel's putting up, but I have grave concerns that he's about to show the jury a whole bunch of stuff that they have never seen and no one's authenticated or testified to in this trial at all.
These are demonstrative things, Judge. This is closing argument. We've had a lot of testimony about the Law Enforcement Training Center. So that is, we've had testimony about his training, and we've had testimony about use of force. These are just demonstrative things, not in evidence. I mean, they're in evidence to the extent that they testified about.
The only thing that caught my eye there is the argument that this is what he received as part of what he testified to.
Okay. Yeah, these are just demonstrative.
And there's nothing on those that show the Coast Guard manual or anything like that would be, for example, I know the state presented a few of the pages from the actual manuals themselves.
From the manual, the only thing that I have is what I've created that shows he testified about officer presence, verbal commands, control techniques, aggressive response techniques, intermediate weapons, and weapons retention.
Okay. And this, what is that? Is that something you put together, or is that actually coming?
Yeah, I've clipped it and cut it from things that I found.
Well, what's behind it is an orange thing that has physical fitness standards and search incident to arrest behind it. So, and it says objectives completed. Travis McMichael never testified to any of those things.
Testified to his training and that he did these things.
And what's the thing at the top, Your Honor? We have Maritime Law Enforcement Academy Student Profile Report. That wasn't tendered in, and then we've got that next to it.
Well,
for official use only.
Yeah, I just intend to talk about the course that he took, the courses that he took that he testified to.
No, there's more to that. That says it's a student profile report. That was not testified to. That was not tendered in. Lost it. Yeah, I don't have any problem with argument about what he testified to, but once we start getting into what the curriculum was or an individual report,
All right, how's that?
that works a lot.
And I just have this.
Can you go back to
Oh, sure.
Just digest it?
State objects to the heading on that, since it attempts to have a photo of something that was never testified to.
What's the heading?
It has an image of some Coast Guard thing.
It's where he went to school. He testified to it. What is so objectionable about that? Mr. Rubin showed it in his opening statement. Something else.
He testified to where he went to school, he testified to what he did in the training, and he testified to his rank, which I think is actually the other thing that's shown on there.
Right.
We can get back to it. Yeah, actually, that removes even that part. Okay, I don't, that, the objection is granted in part. As that slide has been amended, I don't have any issue with that.
Okay.
The use of that,
This
that's
is
part
what
of the
testified.
argument.
Yeah, this is just
Yeah,
part of
that's-
it.
he's talked about.
And then there's the Satilla Shores
But
neighborhood
please
sign.
back up one more.
What was the rank?
This is his testimony at trial.
Well, wait a second. Handwritten notes by the attorney as to his testimony at trial. We're going to show those to the jury.
Of course we are. I wrote them right in front of him as he was testifying. This isn't appropriate to get this deep into my presentation. These are the notes that I took at trial, the same way that I can show this one. Judge?
Well, those are your notes.
Yes, based on his testimony. I did it in front of the jury, just like I did this one. I can put my notes up.
They're just what you're referring to.
Yeah, I'm saying
So-
you saw him testify.
So the unfortunate thing is when everyone's just talking, as I'm working through things, I can't think it through. So what you are using the slide to show is what his testimony was at the time.
The state has chosen to type it up. They decided to type up what was said. You heard Greg and Michael say, you heard Travis and Michael say, this is my notes as I was writing, as he was talking in front of the jury with the state present during trial. I do this because it captures what's said on the stand in a visual way and the jury can understand it. I don't see what the objection is. The state can talk about and type up, but I can't show what I wrote down during the testimony. That doesn't make any sense.
I understand now what that was. I did not, and I agree. Mr. Sheffield did write those things down on the big piece of paper. If he chooses now to show it this way, the state's okay with that.
Okay.
The problem becomes the next photo of Satilla Shores. No one testified to that photo.
We're really objecting that Satilla Shores is a neighborhood with a neighborhood sign out front? What's so objectionable about that? It's just a chapter heading of what I'm going to be presenting.
Judge, my fear here is just that I'm going to have to object to every single slide when it comes up where no one's testified to it or contains information no one testified to.
Well, and I think we've just seen a number of things. The state has a continuing objection then to the Satilla Shores sign. Now, I understand that's not in evidence, but it's the sign itself. And if it's simply being used as indicated as sort of a chapter marker, then I'll permit the defense to use that. What the changes that have been made now to the slide that showed the training, what I understand now is limited to what was actually testified to.
Right.
And it will be referred to that way as opposed to here's the manual or here's what the Coast Guard instructed him. I won't limit you on exactly how you can present that, but as long as it's not a presentation as if it was evidence separate from testimony that was provided by Mr. McMichael from the witness stand. And the use of force continuum is just what you're using to demonstrate the argument as opposed to relying on that as a training device or something that was actually presented in training.
Right.
Okay.
So Judge, I'm just asking for a little direction from the court. These are just the first couple. So if there's some photos that no one's ever testified to that are in this, I'm going to object. If there are other things, like for instance, there's a picture of the neighborhood and somehow they've marked every time a 911 call came in. No one testified to all the 911 calls in the neighborhood, but there may be a graphic that shows all of that. If such graphic exists, I'm not saying it does. I don't know what kind of graphic Mr. Sheffield is going to be. I'm going to object. And if this happens more than twice within this PowerPoint, I'm going to ask that we stop, unfortunately, and go through every single slide, because at that point, I'm going to be up here objecting constantly to his closing because it contains things that were never testified to and no evidence was presented at trial because of it. That is my concern.
I have a slide of the neighborhood that I've created, that I put little circles on, and I put things on it that are representative of the testimony of Officer Rash and the GBI and going door to door and neighbors who have been complaining about things. I'm not going to say the neighbor at this address called 911 on this date or that date. It's argument. It's demonstrative of my argument. I don't see any basis for the state to object, and I don't have anything else in it that's a photograph. So.
I understand the issue, and we'll see where it goes.
Thank you, Judge.
Yeah.
Ready
If
to
he
go?
wants to object and do it, that's fine. We'll just deal with it as it comes, I guess. I don't think it's objectionable.
A flash drive of TikTok videos. Juror 219.
Let's take care of that.
We can do that later. Just once you let, it's available.
Okay, let's go get the panel. Mr. Sheffield.
Duty and responsibility and following the law will always be intertwined with heartache and tragedy. This case is about three things. It's about watching, it's about waiting, it's about believing. Travis McMichael spent almost a decade of his life learning about duty and responsibility. He received extensive training on how to make decisions that would ultimately impact his beliefs as a petty officer in the Coast Guard, as a boarding officer in the Coast Guard, into some of the most treacherous waters extending some 200 miles off the coast of the United States. He trained relentlessly about his duty and his responsibility. Even after active service and then coming into smaller communities and working in the Coast Guard, he trained weekly, sometimes daily, on what the law provided that he do, what his responsibilities were, how he would make decisions in critical moments of policing and in critical moments of rescue. These teachings were burned within his brain to the point of muscle memory, so that he could perform his duty and his responsibility to his country and his community. He talked to you about officer presence and how he trained for officer presence. He talked with you about verbal commands and how he would use verbal commands to try to police or to try to calm or to try to de-escalate situations. He talked with you about control techniques and the things that he would have to use to get control from those persons who he was investigating. Aggressive response techniques, something that he never had to use on his job, but something that he trained weekly, every Friday with the red man suit. And he talked with you also about intermediate weapons, weapons retention, and the use of deadly force. Travis spent a long time going through these things in his testimony. If you recall, I was writing feverishly as he was testifying so that I could capture what it was that he had to share with us about these things. And it includes what gave him the right to search, examine, arrest, seize, inspect, inquire. He talked with you about the level of suspicion by a reasonable and prudent person given the overall circumstances to believe that crime has been committed, probable cause. He spoke with you about the use of force continuum. He talked with you about de-escalation and how de-escalation was always the goal. He talked with you about leaps, listen, empathize, ask questions, paraphrase, summarize. Why? So that you could gain understanding, so that you could continue to investigate, de-escalate, learn what's going on, and figure it out. And he talked also about weapon retention and using a weapon, if it had to come to that, to de-escalate a situation. When Travis moved back home to Satilla Shores, he did so with his 3-year-old son, Everett. He moved in with his mother, his father, and then eventually his sister joined them in the home. You've heard about Satilla Shores from several witnesses who came to talk to you about what they were experiencing in this once idyllic neighborhood. A neighborhood that was once a place where elderly would walk at night, kids would play after dark. But over time, how that began to lessen. And Travis began to notice it, among others, about how things in the neighborhood started to change. From learning that the GBI went around, to learning that Officer Rash went around, to what was being posted on Facebook, to hearing from witnesses on the stand, to hearing Rash talk about driving through the neighborhood, witnesses talking about police cars going through the neighborhood at night, shining flashlights. This neighborhood was being covered in suspicious persons, in extra watches, in neighborhood patrols, in concerned citizens. It was everywhere. It was on Facebook. An account created so neighbors could help each other. And the types of things that these neighbors would talk about to each other was about the crime that was being committed to them, to their neighbors, crime that they had seen happening across the street from them, crime that some was reported, but not all. You heard a lot of people talk about, I didn't call the police because what's the point? Crime is over and the people are gone. But they told you that what was happening in their neighborhood scared them. It caused them concern. It was unsettling to imagine people lurking and sneaking around your property at night so that your cameras are going off, your doorbell cameras going off. That's frightening. One of our witnesses testified about how emotional she got because she had to tell her children, you can't go out at night anymore. And the steps that they took to protect each other using Facebook, hey, be on the lookout. You heard Cindy Clark testify about how she offered to go get license plates on 2 separate occasions for cars coming in the neighborhood. Or how she called the police on a bunch of people that were walking into the neighborhood after their car had supposedly broken down, but it was really stolen. These are real experiences, real people who were very scared. And so they took it upon themselves to do something about it. Got cameras, call the police, notify each other, citizens watch, neighborhood watch. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Even Travis himself had taken it upon himself to try to investigate one particular person that had been identified as possibly being homeless and living under the bridge. Travis explained to you that he had learned about a neighbor having her purse stolen. Of course, there were other complaints of crime in the neighborhood as well. And he thought, after boating home one afternoon and seeing what he thought was a homeless encampment under the bridge, that this could be the guy. So he finished going home. He got his dad, who is a lifetime law enforcement officer and investigator, and they went over and they drove and they walked down under the bridge. And instantly, when Travis did this, you saw evidence of his muscle memory. He talked about walking down, not holding a weapon out, not armed with the gun out. He had his gun with him just in case he needed it for protection. But he walked down to do what? Use leaps, to listen, to have a conversation. And as he walked down under the bridge, he saw a bunch of trash and a bunch of items and a machete and a man fishing. So he followed his training. He politely stepped in between the machete and the man. He said, hey, bud, you living down here? Everything okay? As he's doing that, he's looking around, looking to see if that purse is there. He's looking to see if any of those other stolen items may be there. The man responded, no, just fishing. When they left, they called the police. You have evidence of that. You heard Greg McMichael on the call with the police, non-emergency line, just saying, hey, we want y'all to go check out this guy under the bridge that we've called you about. State asked Travis, well, why don't you describe this fella for us? White, black, Asian, Hispanic. It's the white guy. Called the police. He was gone by the time the police got there, and that was the end of it. But the man under the bridge, or the idea that there could be a man living under the bridge, did not go away. That theme and that person comes back during 2019. The real problem, as the neighbors and neighborhood of Satilla Shores were trying to figure out what was going on and who may be responsible for it, was that 220 Satilla Drive residents, a residence that had a unique type of crime going on in it, one much different from what they had been experiencing. So dark you can't even see the photograph of it, but it was the photograph of 220 Satilla Shores at night, along with the dock down by the water at night. And what all of these neighbors are going to soon become aware of is that there is a repeat offender who is coming at a time when he has absolutely no lawful reason for being there. Just to start with, on October 25th, Larry English calls the police. And we learn from Larry English that there is a man plundering around. Larry English at this time only has 2 cameras. one on the dock and one behind the house looking out in the backyard of the house. Larry English says he looks drunk or on drugs. That's concerning. Larry English identifies to the police, I have a lot of valuables in my house. Tools, equipment, things of that nature. Never seen this gentleman before and it doesn't look good. Police come, but there is no person that is found. What you need to understand about burglary is burglary includes any house, building, or structure which is designed or intended for occupancy for residential use. This unoccupied, unsecured construction site, which could be anything, is not the same thing as Larry English's residence that's being built. That's a term that the state continues to use, the unoccupied, unsecured construction site, which doesn't even begin to tell the story of what this is. On 11/17/2019, two people are seen on the video. It's a white couple that goes in and comes out. What's significant about Larry English's report, though, on 11/17 is not that the two people that I saw on the video tonight have stolen something. He says, we had stuff stolen about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. He's now telling the police he had stuff stolen from his home. The next night, Mr. Arbery returns. At night, pitch black dark, no lights on in the house whatsoever. And this time, Larry English has put cameras inside the residence. Now, he sees and reports that Mr. Arbery is looking inside a boat. The same boat? No. No, that boat, he got there on the morning of the 18th, and he took it back to Douglas, Georgia with him. That's what he says right there at the bottom. Brought the boat back to keep from stealing electronics off of it. He is communicating this to 911. This is official. He is reporting again. We had a situation with the same guy a week and a half ago. It says it right there. He was on about 3 people's cameras. And just to emphasize, on 12/1/19, English calls the police again. He talks about somebody might be living under the bridge. That idea is still floating out there, still considering it. But again, he says, I had a bunch of stuff stolen out of the boat, which again confirms what we're talking about. And on 2 of these occasions, we have video of Mr. Arbery inside the residence. First on the dock, and the second inside the house looking into the boat. The video ends right there. Travis McMichael has his own horrifying experience with a man that he is about to learn has just been involved in all this stuff with Larry English. He's been told some things by his mother and his father and other neighbors before this moment, but he's going to learn some things for himself on 2/11/20. On this night, Travis is driving out of the neighborhood to go get some gas. He wants to fill up so he doesn't get 4 a.m. and do it. And on his way out, as he's driving down the road out of the neighborhood, he sees a man run across the street and then duck into the shadows. From this house, ducking through the shadows, through the trees, all the way across until he gets in front of this house. Travis backs his car up and splashes his headlights up on the house. The gentleman steps behind a porta potty. Travis then starts to get out because he wants to say, hey, what are you doing here? The guy comes out from behind a porta potty, lifts his shirt up, and acts like he's reaching in his pocket. And that totally freaks out Travis. Despite his training, despite his experience, it freaks him out. Travis tries to talk to him. Now, the guy never says, hey, I'm sorry. I am so sorry. I was walking my dog, or I'm so sorry. I did not mean to startle you, like any one of you would if you were out in the yard late at night. Didn't say anything. Just did this. Travis got in his car, reversed out, stalled the car, but backed up and zipped home to tell his dad. As soon as his dad hears what's going on, his dad decides to go check it out. At the same time, Diego Perez has apparently been called, and he's going to check it out. They take firearms with them. Travis tells you, he said, Dad, whoa, wait a second. This guy could be armed. Wait a second. But his dad was already walking down the street. Travis gets in his truck. He backs up. He's calling 911, and he returns to the house where he puts the headlights on the house, watching, waiting, believing that this man could be dangerous, believing that his dad could now be in danger, believing that something awful could happen. So he posts up right here, lights on, and waits for the police that he himself called. And when the police arrive, he stands there and he talks to the police. He tells them, hey, my dad's in there. Travis, why didn't you go in there? Why didn't you go in the house? He's like, I'm not going in there. I'm not going in there. When this guy did this, that was enough for me. I'm staying out here. It's a reasonable thing to do. Ultimately, Travis calls police, and we hear what he tells police instantly on the phone. We've had a string of burglaries, a lot of burglaries and break-ins. That's what he tells them. That's what's in his mind almost from the very beginning. He startled me. He reached into his pocket. Didn't know if he was armed or not. Looked like he was acting. He was. He's sneaking behind a bush. He also tells you he had a pistol stolen about a month ago. This is what he's saying, and you hear him breathing. He's, and the operator says, you all right, hon? Yeah, he just startled me. That's real. That's a real experience with the guy going into a house after being seen at night with headlights and reaching and then turning around and going into a house that's not his. Where is the logic in that? And Travis then stays, talks with the officer, and then sees the video and sees this gentleman just walking around the house like he didn't just get stopped, caught, and seen and had this interaction with Travis like it never happened. He's just walking around the house very calmly. And Travis feels that that is so bold and brazen to do that. It frightens him about this guy. It worries him about this guy. Mr. Reno is what happened. What happens next is the two officers show up and being told what they've been told, that the guy acted like he had a gun and that he went into the house, they pull out their firearms and start going through the house, looking and shouting and calling with their guns out because they might need to protect themselves. Are they committing an aggravated assault when they do this? Are they committing a false imprisonment when they do this? No, they're searching, looking, and trying to apprehend whoever's in the house who may be armed. And then everybody meets outside and they talk. And this is where Travis gets the rest of the information. Aside from his own personal experience, he and his father talking to Officer Rash, Diego Perez, Matt Albenzi, Ronnie Olson, and Brandon Gregory, the officer who also works with Glenn County Police. They talk that night. And they talk about what's been going on. And Travis gets to see the rest of the video and he's like, yep, this guy is that guy. It's all the same guy. Been break-ins, been a lot of burglaries going on. He knows that stuff's been stolen already. And they have a conversation. And you heard part of that conversation from the transcript. Rash says, well, we haven't actually seen him take it. It's because there was no camera on it. But I guarantee you, if one of you left your bag in this room and we all went out into the hallway, and then I walked in here and you saw me walk in here and you never saw me leave. And when you come back in, you walk in, you go, where's my bag? Well, nobody else came in here, but Jason did, and the bag is gone. And oh, look, there's a back door. Is it reasonable to believe that I may have taken your bag? Of course it is. This is a burglary. He says, haven't seen him actually take anything. Yeah, criminal trespassing, officer arrested. Yeah, at the very least. Travis is thinking about Ahmaud Arbery. He's thinking about what must be in his mind in order for himself to try to figure some things out. Travis knows that he caught Ahmaud going into the house. He knows that. And so Ahmaud should know that Travis knows that. He knows that Ahmaud has been down on the dock, and that Ahmaud should know he's been down on the dock, that he's been on someone else's property. He's got to know that by now, Travis is thinking. He knows it's not his home or his house under construction. He knows that he's been caught sneaking around the bushes. Travis is the one that caught him. He knows that there's been a confrontation about that. He knows, he believes Mr. Arbery's got to be, this guy, this man has to understand that these things have taken place, that he had headlights on him, that somebody was trying to talk to him about why he was out after dark in front of this house and he didn't respond. If I say to one of you, hey, how are you doing? And you just look at me and you walk away, you know you've looked at me and walked away. You know that that's part of what's happened. And he's still in the house after being confronted in the dark. And then he looked around. He knows that he's in the house looking around. And eventually that he'll be seen on the 23rd going in the house, and that people were trying to talk to him and that he's not answering anybody, any questions. And ultimately, he knows that the police are on the way. Travis knows these things must be in Mr. Arbery's mind because they were part of the very real experience that he had with him. And because of that, Travis is starting to believe and expect certain things in return. Obvious, ordinary, natural things that should happen in return. To constitute the offense of burglary, it's not necessary that a break-in happen, that something gets broken. You recall all the questions by the state of the witnesses. Well, was anything broken? Was a window broken? Was a door broken? That's not what's required for the law. Those questions are meaningless and they are red herrings. Nothing has to be broken. You just have to break the plane of the structure to constitute a burglary. Then you don't have to show that an actual theft had been committed. Nothing actually has to be stolen. You just have to enter with the intent to steal something. Where do we derive a person's intent to steal something from a house? Well, they certainly go into a house that isn't theirs, that contains valuables, and they do it at a time when they shouldn't be doing it, and under circumstances that are very problematic, including running from other people who see you. Lastly, Larry English's deposition. Mr. English couldn't be here, he's very sick. Watching a lot of deposition is a hard thing to do. The basics of this deposition. You made your neighbors aware, the ones that we've mentioned, Al Benzie, Greg, Ronnie Olson, you made these guys aware that you had stuff stolen out of your boat. Yes, and in fact, you wanted your neighbors to help you catch the guy. Yes, Diego. I wanted Diego to catch this guy. You never told them at any point, hey guys, I'm sorry, it wasn't stolen when it was at my house. It was stolen when it was off property. You never told them that, did you, Mr. English? Never told them that. You never announced it on Facebook. You never announced it on Next Door Neighbor. You never corrected what you now say is it was stolen off-site somewhere. You never told your neighbors that. And he says no. So then, therefore, Mr. English, to your knowledge, they were left with the impression that stuff had been stolen from your boat at 220 Satilla. I guess so. What was Ahmaud Arbery doing in Satilla Shores from October 2019 to February 2020? There is no evidence that Ahmaud Arbery ever jogged or exercised in Satilla Shores. Not one friend, not one family member, not one eyewitness. Even Rash going door to door, there is no evidence whatsoever that Satilla Shores was a place of exercise and jogging for Ahmaud Arbery. Officer Rash testified that by December 19, he knew Larry had a cooler stolen, electronic equipment stolen from the offshore boat while it was parked in the RV garage. And Bob said, that's a burglary. A burglary had been committed in this residence. And he said, that's right. But it was never reported. Like, we didn't have a report about it, so I didn't really investigate it. But that is a burglary. And he has admitted that to you as well. February 23rd. Mr. Olson's surveillance camera shows that Mr. Arbery walked into the neighborhood and run. He then stood in the yard and put his hands on his hips, looked around like this, and then went into the residence. Matt Albenzi was doing work in his yard, and he saw this gentleman who resembled the gentleman who had committed what they thought was a burglary in that residence. He shut down the work that he was doing, put a gun in his pocket, grabbed his cell phone, and he walked all the way up the street to the corner where Jones meets Satilla, where he keeps his mailbox. And he stood there right next to this tree, and he called 911. At some point in the video, when you see Mr. Arbery run out, you'll see he passes right through the window. And Mr. Albenzi is standing right there on the phone calling the police. His behavior then changes. Instantly, Mr. Arbery is at a full sprint, running into the neighborhood. Running into the neighborhood. Which the state is going to infer means he's going on his regular job. But no, because running out of the neighborhood is a problem. It's a problem now because there's a guy standing there on the phone looking at you back in the same residence that you've been caught in now 3 times. Caught, meaning on camera, and police coming and searching with lights, and Travis McMichael, and to return to that house in the middle of the day like that after being run off. Imagine going to visit a house under normal circumstances. Oh, this house looks like one we might want to buy. I'm going to go in there. Then somebody comes up to you with headlights and tries to stop you from going into the house and confronts you about it. Are you literally ever going to go back to that house again? It is unreasonable to think that he's going back there for some lawful purpose after being run out of there 3 times before. So he doesn't run out of either of the entrances to go back across the street where he lives. He runs deep into the neighborhood. Someone has called the police. Now, Travis has told you nothing has erased from his mind about this individual in the 2 weeks between February 11th and February 23rd. It's all still there. And while he's sitting in his home, his dad comes running in the house and says, the guy who's been breaking in down the street is back. He's running past. Get your gun. Travis and his dad carry their firearms for protection wherever they go. That's what they do. The law allows them to do it. They have permits to do it. Travis testified he had a concealed permit at one point. The law allows this behavior. Travis comes out to the street. He looks down the street, right across. Here he is at 2:30. He comes out here. Mr. Arbery has already run past. He comes out here. He looks down the street from where the house is and sees Mr. Matt Albenzi, who is walking towards him, and eventually, after a couple houses, goes like this and points down the street. It is reasonable to conclude that based on what his dad said, who just came running in the house, the guy's back who's broken in, to come outside and look and see Mr. Albenzi, who he knows, who he's talked with, who he's shared thoughts and feelings about the person breaking in the house, is now saying, go that way. The guy is back, to get in his car and go. You cannot act on the unsupported statements of others. The state has characterized that, which is an accurate statement of the law, as Travis's mom. Are you kidding? After all that we have seen, after all that he has experienced, after all the conversation that he's had, after all the videos that he's seen, after what he experienced himself, that he's just going off of what his mommy told him? This is what the state wants you to do something about. This is what they're trying to inject into this case, knowing, despite that Travis has called the police on the white man under the bridge, knowing that Travis called the police on a carjacker or told his police friends when he was in the Coast Guard and a report was made about the white guy that tried to rob his truck, knowing that Travis called the police about his gun being stolen and readily admits, I don't know who stole it, knowing that Travis called the police on the 11th of February. They want to try to reduce this case down to this statement, which is not true. Travis had all of this. His reading Facebook, everything going on at Larry English's house, knowing about what was happening in Satilla Shores, speaking with everybody on the 11th, his own experience, Albenzi signaling, Officer Rash and Matt Albenzi. This is what he carried with him when he left his driveway that day. Reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion. Reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion. Facts and circumstances to warrant a prudent person, one taking care to understand the truth, in believing that the suspect has committed the offense of burglary. Travis believes he's committed the offense of burglary. The facts necessary to establish probable cause for arrest are less than those required to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. It's more than suspicion or possibility. It's got to be a probability, probably. And he said, I had a probability. There was a probability that this was the guy who did it, and here's why I think he did it. And I wrote down every one of the things that we talked about as he testified. I wrote them all down, and they are all encapsulated in that slide I just told you. This is where the duty and responsibility in following the law becomes intertwined with heartache and tragedy. Because you do have the right to perform a citizen's arrest. You do have the right to have a firearm when you make an arrest. You do have the right to stop a person and to hold them and detain them for the police. And there is risk with that. And there are tragic consequences that can come from that. And we can all sit here right now and say what the state has said from the very beginning and what Travis himself recognizes. If he had only stayed home that day, if he just sat on the couch and fallen asleep with his kid that day, Travis told you it's not a day that doesn't go by that he doesn't think that exact same thing. But the law allows the citizens to make a citizen's arrest. And if doing so properly, it is the reason for the actions that follow. Here, you talk about an offense being committed in his presence or when his immediate knowledge. What could be more immediate than February 11th? What could be more immediate than seeing the videos of him in the house and talking with police officers and other people, including hearing from Larry English through others, that he actually had stuff stolen from his property? An offense has been committed and he knows about it. He's seen everything other than the hand on the equipment that was stolen. If it's a felony and the offender is escaping or attempting to escape, then you can arrest him upon reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion, probable cause. Travis said many, many times it was the totality of the circumstances. That's his Coast Guard brain. That's his Coast Guard brain saying everything that I knew gave me the belief that a crime had been committed. Escape. Private citizen's warrant arrest must occur immediately after the perpetration of the offense, or in the case of felonies, during escape. Not every person is arrested at the moment they commit a crime. Not every person is arrested by police, because sometimes the police don't get there in time. But if they learn about the person and they have information about the person, escape can happen anytime. Escape can happen later. It doesn't have to happen right at the same time the crime is committed. There's no law that says that. There's no time limit imposed. The police would never be able to arrest anybody. And a citizen is in the same shoes as an officer when it comes to citizen's arrest. So, Travis, leaving his house, decides he's going to follow. That's what he does. He pulls out after his dad crammed into the front seat with the kid seat there, and he follows. And he watches. And he pulls up next to this gentleman. No gun is raised. No violence is ensued. He doesn't get out of the car. He doesn't tackle him. He doesn't do anything. He does what a reasonably prudent person would do. He does what his training has taught him to do, to use leaps. And he says, hey, man, what's going on? Can you stop for a second, please? I just want to talk to you for a second. There is no violence. If Travis wanted violence against this man, if Travis wanted to hurt him or commit an aggravated assault or commit a false imprisonment, he could have done it right then and there. He doesn't. He talks to him. Mr. Arbery looks him in the eyes, doesn't say a word, doesn't have to, but that's information for Travis. Is it so offensive to pull up next to somebody and say, hey man, can you stop for a second? I want to talk to you. Just for a minute. Hold on a second. Is that so offensive? So he stops. He starts to go back one way. Travis backs up alongside of him, 3 feet away, not pulling in front of him, not pulling behind him, just tries to talk to him. And Mr. Arbery takes off running down the street. And Travis watches him. There he goes. Doesn't take a gun out, shoot him in the back. Doesn't take a gun out and commit an aggravated assault. Doesn't take a gun and try to kill him. Doesn't try to hit him with his truck. He watches him. Watching. So he pulls up next to him. And he stops again. He says, hey, hold on a second. We just want to talk to you for a minute. Something's going on back there. We want to know what's going on. He's not saying to the guy, I don't know what's been going on in this neighborhood. To do that would do what? It would escalate the situation. So he just says, we want to know what's going on back there. Why is that guy pointing at you? Why is he doing that? Mr. Arbery stops. He looks him dead in the eyes, doesn't say a word. And Travis just says, we want you to stay right here. We're calling the cops. Call the cops. Call the cops. And Mr. Arbery bolts. Now, on the subject of police, Travis told you. Got in the car with my dad. I said, Dad, are the cops coming? Yeah, go this way, go this way. It's very clear. He says he asked his father about the cops being called. They call the cops all the time. This is not like it's a new thing for the McMichaels to call the police. Here, when they say call the cops, now he bolts. And it's on that bolting that Travis thinks this guy knows he's caught. He knows he's caught because he's bolting. He's looked at me. He won't talk to me. That's odd. I'm not talking to him in a too aggressive of a way. And he bolts. And Travis stays right where he is. And he watches. He watches what happens between this truck. He has no clue who this black truck is. In terms of evidence, there is no evidence of any communication between these people, any cooperation between these people, no help, no assistance, no encouraging, nothing. So he sees this truck and he tells you it's one of a couple things. It's either the guy from up at 220, or it's his buddy, maybe trying to give him a lift, or now that I'm watching him, he's being very aggressive against this truck. He's watching it from 200 feet away, but he's thinking this guy's being really aggressive. There's something off with this guy. His dad says, Travis, go. Dad gets out of the car, climbs in the back of the truck with his rebuilt hip and his medical issues. Travis watches him get in, looks down the street, sees this, takes his gun off the floorboard, puts it up on the bench seat. His dad says, go, get down the street. Travis says, no, I'm not going back that way. Something's off with this guy. I'm not going into that. Well, if he wanted to go commit an aggravated assault, if he wanted to go do a false imprisonment, if he wanted to end the life of somebody, whether it's murder or felony murder, there's another chance. But he doesn't. He just watches. And then he says, I'm going to drive around. The judge is going to charge you on hijacking a motor vehicle. A person commits the crime of hijacking a motor vehicle in the second degree when such person obtains a motor vehicle from an individual without his or her consent. Travis is watching this gentleman try to get in the car in an aggressive way, and he thinks that does not look good. Whether he thinks to himself that's a hijacking or not, it doesn't look good. It looks dangerous. Travis also told you that when he came face to face with Mr. Arbery, even though he didn't speak, he looked very angry, he looked very upset, clenching his teeth, but not saying a word. These are the notes I took about it, right in front of you guys. Just wrote it down as he was talking. Stop, please stop. Mad, clenched teeth. It was very unexpected. What's going on? I want to talk to you. What's going on? Police are on the way. And then his dad says, go back. He says, I am not going back there. I'll go from Buford around to Holmes. And that's what he does. He drives around. Now, his dad's in the back of the truck. His dad is old and infirm. He's sitting on this bench in the back of the truck. Travis says he's going with his foot on the brake pretty much 3 or 4 miles an hour. Drives all the way around thinking, I'm not going to go back into this mess down here. I'll drive around. And when he drives around, you've now learned about this dog leg. That black line essentially is the dog leg. You can't see past it. Travis tells you the first thing he sees is Mr. Arbery doing a U-turn right there at the crest of that turn. What does he do? He watches. Does he drive at him? No. Does he try to tackle him? No. Does he put a shotgun at him? No. Does he yell at him? No. He's trying to continue to assess the situation in a reasonable, prudent fashion. Then he drives across the dog leg, comes all the way to the end of the street, and he sees Mr. Arbery again with this truck. Again, with this truck, tangled up with this truck. And what looks like, again, aggression at the truck. So Travis stops. He stops. He's thinking to himself, why is this guy not running through this open yard? This is Satilla right here. This is Holmes. This is where he sees the truck. What is with it that this guy's not going this way? And who is that truck? What's happening? Instead, they both run around Travis, back up around the dog leg. And Travis says, okay, I'm watching, I'm looking, I'm going to pull forward, stop in my car at the end of the street, and I'm just going to take up a spot right here. I'm going to take up a spot here. I know that he's currently not over here. I know he's not behind me. I can see my house right there. I can see up Satilla Drive, and I'm looking up homes. I'm just going to take up residence right here, and I'm going to watch to see what happens next. Because maybe this guy will come back, and we can stop him, or maybe he'll just keep running that way. Maybe he'll keep running that way, and I can tell the police, I'm pretty sure he's not this way. Pretty sure he's not over here. He's not there. He's headed that way. What he doesn't know is that Mr. Arbery is turning around up on the other side of the dog leg. And this is where our video picks up with Roddy Bryant. By now, it should be clear. Travis doesn't even know where Roddy Bryant is. To say that Roddy Bryant's turn up there and to follow him back, Travis has no idea what's happening behind the blind side of that curve. And still doesn't know who this truck is and why this gentleman is interacting with it in the way that he is. But this is what's happening unbeknownst to Travis. Mr. Arbery turns around, and you get a quick glimpse of what's up the street, and it isn't Travis McMichael's truck. It isn't there. It's because it's all the way back down home near Satilla. The state is going to play the recording that you've heard of Mr. Bryant turning, driving, and revving, and doing all this stuff. This will be the third interaction that Mr. Arbery will have coming at this truck. And Mr. Bryant is freaked out, to say the least. So freaked out, he drops his phone. This is where the phone drops and goes pitch black for about a minute. And in this time, you'll hear sounds.
You'll hear engine noise. You'll hear turning. You'll hear shifting. You'll hear seat belts clanking. You'll hear the 3-point turn eventually. He says, well, you know what? I'm going to head back that way. But what you don't hear on that phone, even after audio enhancement, even after any kind of working with audio specialists and digital specialists, you'll never, ever hear any yelling and no communication between Travis or Greg. The state wants you to think that it's at this moment, Greg McMichael drives by and says, I'm going to blow your GD head off. Well, if he said it, you'd have heard it. It'd been on that telephone and they'd have played it for you. It ain't there. So Roddy Bryan is all the way up. This blue mailbox down here, a little closer up picture, is where Mr. Arbery turns around. This is the demonstration video with Seacrest. And this is Mr. Bryan's actual video. This is how far up the road he is. This is the minute that he's been with his phone down on the floor. And in this minute, 2 times, Mr. Arbery is going to run towards Travis. First time, turn around and go back. And the second time, he'll turn around and go back. And that's where that video will pick him up on the second time. So the first time, Ahmaud Arbery comes across that dog leg, he's coming at Travis. At this moment, he's looking into Travis's eyes and he's coming at him and ultimately is going to get within 10 feet of him running while Travis is saying, stop, do not come any closer, stop right there, stop. No gun in his hand, just saying, stop, do not come any closer. Now at this moment, Travis has already had his experience, obviously, where he reached for the gun before, where he was acting bold. He's not going to forget that. He's not going to forget that he just saw what looked like attacking this truck, acting violent, being bold. And none of what he experienced that day will be forgotten. Trying to talk to him. I want to talk to you. What's going on? You've called the police. And noting that he's not acting right, something is off, and Dad saying go back there, and he said, no way, I'm not going back to that. But now he's running at Travis. We have proof that he was on that truck because his palm print is right there, and it's consistent with a right thumbprint right there. That's just one piece of proof that his hands were on the door that supports Travis's belief that he was trying to get into that truck. And here he comes. And Travis finally takes a stand and says, do not come any closer to me. Ultimately, Travis, when he gets about 10 feet, reaches into the truck like this, and that's what causes Mr. Arbery to turn. And he runs all the way back. Travis testified, I ran to him for about 10 yards. I don't know, because my main concern is this guy's got a gun. I'm trying to avoid the whole situation from happening. So he watches him. There's 2 options here. There's watching him until the police arrive and giving directions, and there's also stopping him. But he's not going to chase him to stop him. But he is going to try to stop him and detain him, especially when he's coming at him. So he watches. Again, taking up, looking out, trying to be ready. And by the way, where are the police? Where are they? They should be here by now. That's what he says to his dad. Where the heck are the police? Did you call the police? No, I don't have my cell phone on me. Said, what? Dad. God. Dials the number, gives it, listens, gives it to him. Again, it's what they do. They call the police. And now Ahmaud is coming back for the second time. Travis felt, and it was through rehabilitation on redirect examination that we learned during his interview with Nohilly, he was telling Nohilly the same things. There's something not there. This gentleman is not connecting it up. Something's not right. I'm telling him to quit, stop coming at me. I see where it's going. The second time around, I see where this is going. And by the way he was acting prior to, I don't know if he had a weapon on him. An aggravated assault, by the way, is a felony that can be committed by the use of fists. The threat of the use of a dangerous object or weapon. The threat of it. The intent to use your fist to create serious bodily injury. Fists are that weapon. And right now, as Ahmaud Arbery is running toward Travis McMichael, he could have a gun, and he definitely has fists. And he's coming straight at him after being told the first time to stop and turn around and didn't do it until Travis had to reach inside his car. That has now put him on alert. The second time that Mr. Arbery comes down the street, Travis says he gets 30 to 40 feet from him. He's afraid that he will be on him in a matter of seconds. He is afraid that he will beat him with his fist or whatever weapon he might have, and he's scared. And so he's done what he thinks the law allows him to do, which is to try to de-escalate that approach by showing force. Showing force necessary to prevent Travis himself or his father from getting beaten and possibly killed. And so he raises the gun. And he does it to defend himself, to protect himself. They call it the 21-foot rule. So he was a little early. He was at 30 to 40. But he did it because he was afraid. And what happens is it causes a reaction from Ahmaud. He changes from the left side of the road to the right, but then he starts coming back at Travis across the road again, and then gets even closer. He starts on the left. It causes him to change, but then he comes back again. Once the gun is down, he comes back again and changes to the left side of the road, and now we see him going back over toward the right. Now, Travis, this is his truck looking down on it. Travis is here, originally in the door jamb, but he told you, as Mr. Arbery came closer, he did this, it made him change direction. Now he's coming, he's wavering on the road, and so Travis is walking away. He's backing up. He's not charging at him. He's backing up to try to create space and distance. He has this gun here, and he is literally watching him. We see his foot plant right there, and Travis is thinking to himself, please turn, please turn, please turn. That's what he told y'all. That's what he told Nohili. Please turn into this yard. Please don't come at me. I am backing up. I'm just trying to keep an eye to make sure please don't come at me. And as he comes around to the far side of the truck, he can't see him. He's backed up over here. So he's stepped up over here to try to get a look at what's happening because he's afraid that Mr. Arbery is going to be down or finally go for the gun or seek cover or something. Please turn, please turn. Please go off into this yard. He never, ever, when he left his driveway that day, thought that things would end this way. Not ever. He told us, I'm on the left side of my truck. I'm waiting for him to get by. He told us, if he would have run by me, no problem. I was giving him the opportunity to run by me. Travis doesn't have a duty to retreat. He's allowed to stay where he thinks he is lawfully allowed to be and to try to defend himself and others. And then Ahmaud takes that turn. Not this turn, this one. And you'll see his feet come, his elbow raises, and Travis is thinking, if this guy gets a hold of my shotgun, this is not going to end well. He's going to end up with the shotgun and kill me. Travis is thinking, my son. Ahmaud comes around, squares up, and you will see Travis's head is right there. His head never comes past that seat post. But you will see Ahmaud come across to Travis, and the first shot happens right over here. You can watch up top as he moves across. You see the white shirt moving across in between those two headrests, and you see Travis's head never comes beyond that front end of his truck. It's all up here with the t-shirt. Right here, his head is down. He's in full charge. First shot has already happened. You can see the same movement under the truck. If you'll look here, this is the shadow. It's kind of, eventually becomes kind of circular like a stop sign, but you'll see it moving in between these wheels right here. See it? There it is, moving back, coming forward, coming all the way across. He's charging with his feet. Travis is trying to brace himself. Is there any question that Ahmaud Arbery had his hands on this firearm? Any question at all? Travis, in his interview, told you, I was under shock. I was under stress. I don't know. If he had his hand on the gun, I think he did. I think he did. I think he had my shirt. He was punching me. Travis is in a state of disrepair. There's no question that Ahmaud's hands are on this gun. And the medical examiner from that stand told you that if Ahmaud Arbery is grabbing this gun and trying to pull it away, that as the gun gets pulled out of his hands and fired, it could fire right on that wrist and shoot into the chest and go across the body. Pull it straight out. No question. This is about this gun. Travis turns into Ahmaud, trying to use his entire body, pulls the end of the shotgun away from him, gets pushed across the road into the grass, and the second shot goes off. Here's the plume, and it's believed that it didn't hit Mr. Arbery. Travis coming out of the grass now, trying to yank this gun from Mr. Arbery. Again, trying to yank it away from him. Ahmaud's hand still on it. Ahmaud's fist now raising. Is there any question that Ahmaud Arbery is assaulting Travis McMichael right before that third shot? Not one single bit of question. And that third shot goes off. And these 2 minutes end where they started, face to face, looking into each other's eyes. Never a word being spoken by Mr. Arbery. And it is absolutely horrific and tragic that this has happened. And again, this is where the law is intertwined with heartache and tragedy. You are allowed to defend yourself. You are allowed to use force that is likely to cause death or serious bodily injury if you believe it's necessary. At that moment, Travis believed it was necessary. This is a law that is for a person in Travis's situation. And you can do it to prevent death to yourself or a third person, or to prevent the commission of a forcible felony, like aggravated assault. Aggravated assault is a felony which can occur by use of fists. Greg McMichael with a hip replacement, heart attack, stroke, sitting in the back of that truck. Travis was afraid for him. If this was a case about wanting to murder a black jogger, if this was really a case about that, Travis would not have reacted the way he reacted. It was described to you by Brooke Perez. She talked about how totally freaked out he looked, how totally discombobulated he was. And she was right. The officer saying, just breathe, just breathe. Just take a minute, just breathe. Just calm down. I know, just hold on a second. It was from that spot to this spot within just an hour and a half of what had happened, where he would be brought for several hours of questioning. He was afraid. He was in shock. His adrenaline was still going through his body. You guys know how fear and worry works. You sat here through jury selection all day and probably felt that just by getting asked questions for an hour. Travis testified, even though he didn't have to. The judge will give you the law that cloaks Travis in sort of a shield of silence. You don't have to testify. You are presumed innocent. You have the right to remain silent. The state has to prove that you did that. You don't have to get up there and testify. He did, because he wanted you to understand what happened from him. He told you about the thefts and the burglaries, the totality of the facts, why he believed what he did, that he wanted to follow him, that he wanted to talk to him, that he wanted to stop him, for the police to detain him. Don't be fooled by this word arrest. You don't have to announce you're under arrest. He told you why he raised the gun, because he was afraid that he would be on him within seconds. And the gun did exactly what he hoped it would be. It deterred him. And why ultimately he shot. The state wants to criticize Travis for testifying. I thought of this example as the state was talking about bias and prejudice. Travis is a liar. He's a liar because he has everything to gain by testifying here. He's got everything to lose by testifying. We are judgmental people. He's got 2 hours to tell you what happened at the risk of all of you sitting in judgment of him and saying, I don't believe him. He's got everything to lose. But should he be labeled as so biased because the state indicted him for murder and brought this case to a trial where he has the right to testify if he wants to? Should we label him biased and motivated and a liar because he took the stand? How about I say to any of you, prove your name. Prove to me what your name is. I'm going to make up a name since we're not naming you and we're not identifying you. My name is Patricia. Okay, Patricia, prove your name is Patricia. Well, okay, my mother. I'll bring my mother into court. What are we going to say about your mother? Well, of course, she wants to help you prove your name is Patricia because she's your mother. She loves you. She's on your side. So that's how that works. Well, here's a piece of paper that says, here's a piece of mail that says, my name is Patricia. Well, of course, you bring that document, but where'd that come from? You could have doctored that up. This kind of stuff, while credibility is for you to determine, this whole assuming that somebody is biased simply because they elect to come and tell you what happened is a game. It's an unfair game. I wanted to show you the law about arrest and what it says. It doesn't require you actually announcing that you are under arrest. It's doing any seizing or taking or detaining, either by touching or by any act indicating an intention. Stop where you are, stop right now. And at the last moment, he said, stop and get on the ground. Even along Holmes or Burford, stop, I'm talking to you, stop. He's trying to detain him. Travis could have not gotten in his car. Travis could have told his dad, this is not going to work today, Dad. You can't sit in the baby seat. Let's just go back inside. Travis could have watched Ahmaud run down the road. He could have done everything other than what actually happened. He could have done any of that and wishes that he would have. But that does not mean that his actions on that day weren't rooted in the law that enabled him to go out there based on everything he knew to do what he did that day. Travis could have is another red herring. It's a flawed argument to take you off and to make you feel emotional about this case. That we would be here but for. Well, of course that's true. But then we could go back and say, Travis wouldn't be here but for his grandparents, picking his mother and father. But for is loose. That is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about probable cause, totality of circumstances, actual events. But for is some loosey-goosey, illegitimate term. You will not see it in the definition of probable cause. Travis told you, understanding that what he could have done differently that day would mean that Ahmaud Arbery was still alive. He told you. I know that. I know that I killed somebody. And me, him, and our families, we will never be the same. And he carries that with him every day. The murder charge, along with the felony murder charge, the intentional acts is what those are broken down to. Intentionally choosing to commit a crime that either intends to take the life of somebody or ultimately takes the life of somebody. The only time in this case where life was in danger was at the very end of Holmes, when Mr. Arbery chose to cut that turn and go all the way across the front of that truck. Every time they encounter each other on this road, 3 times in front of Roddy Bryan's house, 2 times at the end, 2 times down here. If he wanted to kill him, that's just a nonsensical argument. This was not about taking someone's life that day. Mr. Rubin mentioned to you in his opening statement about duty and responsibility. And I agree with that. Travis felt a duty and responsibility. He has felt it when he served in the Coast Guard. He's felt it to his community, and he felt it on this day, 23rd of February, and he felt it during this trial. He took the stand and testified. He felt it was his duty and responsibility to do that. The state, too, has a duty and responsibility. They have a responsibility to be honest with you, to incorporate all of the facts, and take on their burden. The state spent 2/3 of their opening argument saying what we were going to say. It was like 2 kids getting in trouble, and the first one that gets to the parent and says, so-and-so did something, and the parent needs to say, well, hold on a second, let's hear from the other child. They have a duty to you to prove under the law that Travis, at the time he raised that gun, was not in fear. That at the time Travis shot Mr. Arbery as he came across the front of that car and held the gun and punched him, that he was not in fear of receiving a serious injury or death. And they have a duty to prove to you that when Travis stopped to talk to Ahmaud, that he did so to commit a felony of aggravated assault. That means every time you're walking in your neighborhood and somebody pulls up a truck next to you and says hi or hey, they've committed an aggravated assault or a false imprisonment. Where's the evidence of that? The last duty that is here is yours. And this is a very, very tough one. You all understand, and I will not belabor the lengths that we have gone to meet you, to understand who you are, to understand your background, to understand the thoughts that you have about certain things, and the way that we communicated with each other for several hours to arrive at the point where we felt in our hearts and our minds that you all would carry the banner of the duty and the responsibility that is yours as jurors. This courtroom is sacred. It is our last place for truth. It is where we pull it from the witnesses if we have to, and we present it to you. And we ask that you hold it dear and that you accept your duty to not erode the law as you sit here and think about what the law allows a citizen to do. It is going to take courage.
It's going to take courage to set aside what you think and feel, what may be trying to penetrate you from other sources that you have tried to do your best to avoid, and to focus on the bare facts of this case that have been captured on photograph and on video and have been testified to in this courtroom. It will take courage. In every count in this case, you're going to be asked to make a decision about each person accused. Travis McMichael will have his form, Greg McMichael his, and Rodney Bryant his, and you will be given the option on every one of these charges for not guilty or guilty. The evidence that's been demonstrated to you, I think, is overwhelming, but it doesn't come without hardship on you, consequence for these families. I think the evidence is clear in this case. Travis had spent 9 years in the Coast Guard, search and rescue, policing the water, sometimes 200 feet offshore, going into situations that were very difficult, working with law enforcement, reaching out and extending his hand as firefighter, law enforcement officer combination. For the first time in his life, Travis is now in those waters. He is now the one who needs help. Our goal here has been to do everything we can to dive into those waters, to search for the truth, to pull it from the icy depths and to raise it to the surface. And we have done that. We have done that with Travis McMichael. We have carried him to the surface to you. And now the choice is yours. Will you do as he has done in the past to others? Will you reach out your hand and extend it to Travis McMichael and pull him out of those waters? I think if you've heard anything that I've said, there's only one decision. He is not guilty on all charges. I thank you all for your attention.
Thank you. Yeah, you can just go ahead.
That was a load of crap.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are at a point we're going to break for lunch. We'll break for an hour. Or just a little bit under. We're going to reconvene at 1:30. Again, until all of the closing arguments have been made and you have received the final.
For the police, you have to contain him, not false imprison him, contain him. You have to possibly hold him at gunpoint without firing a shot, not an aggravated assault, but the use of a reasonable and measured amount of force to make him stay where he did not want to stay. So if they were acting within the law, in trying to execute a citizen's arrest, to detain Ahmaud Arbery for the police, then Travis had every single right to defend himself. When Ahmaud Arbery inexplicably took that sharp left turn at the right front of the truck, seeking to disarm Travis McMichael. So, who's got to prove what? We begin, as we always begin in a courtroom, with innocence. And we stay there unless and until the state proves to you that this was not a citizen's arrest and that Travis was not justified in defending himself against Ahmaud Arbery's attack. And they have to convince you of that. Remove your belief in that citizen's arrest or justification to such a degree that you've got left nothing in your minds to doubt it. And that sounds like an enormous burden. Why? Because they have to make you sure of it. You have to have no hesitation, no ambivalence, absolute certainty, because the stakes are as high as they come. It's the highest level of proof we ever ask for in a courtroom. The court will tell you when they say murder and the facts raise justification, and the judge will tell you, justification is self-defense, justification is citizen's arrest. That when the facts are raised to support those defenses, that the state has to disprove them, that you were justified. But why? Why is the standard so incredibly high? And the answer is something you witnessed in this very courtroom. Even in science, errors can happen. And without diligent investigation and inquiry, people can be convicted on the slightest errors, stripped of their freedom for another's inattention or mistakes. Imagine if Dr. Donahue, with all that experience, who made the decision, the conclusion, that the muzzle to target range, the end of Travis's shotgun to the chest of Ahmaud Arbery, was 4 feet away, based on a photograph he compared in a book, without having watched the video, and more egregiously, without even having looked at the clothes that covered Ahmaud Arbery's body. Imagine if that initial conclusion had been all you knew in this case. Wouldn't that have misled you? Wouldn't that have led you to wonder how what you saw in that video could match the opinion of a scientist? Imagine if Brian Leopard hadn't tested Ahmaud Arbery's shirt and scientifically concluded, based on that stippling, that these were contact or near contact wounds. Imagine further if I hadn't emailed Dr. Donahue to take another look at his conclusions based upon the clothing and Brian Leopard's expert report. And further imagine if Dr. Donahue was not an honorable scientist, if he wasn't willing to admit he'd made a mistake and take another look at the science. So that instead of 3 to 4 feet, we now know it's contact, or 3 inches. 3 inches, as opposed to 4 feet. That is a demonstration to you why the system has to work this way, why the state has such a high burden, with evidence that leaves absolutely no reason to doubt, before any one of you can consider declaring that a man seeking to protect himself and his community is a murderer. You determine the facts, and the judge will tell you the law. So, of course, you need to be given the facts accurately and completely. The painful beauty of this case is that almost all of it is recorded. Security videos from outside people's homes in Satilla Shores. Difficult to listen to 911 tapes. And then, of course, the really hard thing to look at, the cell phone video that captured the last moments. Based on those undisputed recorded facts, still in the face of all that you heard and saw, the state's case demonstrated in opening statement, what Mr. Hope told you in opening statement. He told you Greg McMichael was absolutely certain, and he was absolutely right. You were so attentive, and I thank you for that. We all do. You took a lot of notes, and there was a lot of things to take notes about. So you know that the very first words out of Greg McMichael's mouth is that there was no doubt in his mind as to who this guy was. He told Officer Brandeberry that, and it was captured on the body cam that you saw. And later, interviewed at the Glynn County Police Department by Parker Marcy, that investigator told you, here's his statement, here's what he told me. I watched him, and when he came by me, I got a really good look at him. So I mean, it's the same guy. And it was Ahmaud Arbery on the video. He was an intruder. Larry English had reported, because he believed that an intruder had taken thousands of dollars of boat equipment off the offshore boat that had been parked in his RV parking garage. It was Ahmaud Arbery returning night after night without authority to a place where valuables were stored with no legitimate reason for being there. And it was Ahmaud Arbery, as Greg McMichael told immediately after being questioned, who had hauled ass from that house on February 23rd after he'd looked through the window at Matt Albenze on the phone, that he ran from that home. Add all that knowledge, that certainty, to what he learned when Travis jumped into the truck and shared with him what he saw on the driver's side of that truck.
That's not an evidence, and I object to that. This is never an evidence, and the state objects to arguing that's not an evidence.
Your Honor, I believe that is an evidence, and I believe that Travis McMichael testified, and these statements that I'm talking about did come into evidence. I believe you have the jury to remember the evidence.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is up to the jury to recall the evidence that has been presented in this trial. And what lawyers say is not evidence. So it is up to you to recall what the evidence is in the case and to go ahead and address this matter on that basis. I don't have a complete listing of all statements made, but it's up to you, ladies and gentlemen, to recall that. Just because the lawyer says something, again, does not mean it is evidence, and this is argument. Go ahead.
You will be the decider of the facts. You took the notes, and I trust what you will remember from this trial. That Travis jumped into the driver's seat of that truck after having seen Matt Albenze standing in front of 220 Satilla Drive and pointing down that street, signaling down that street. That the man that Travis McMichael had seen only 11 days earlier with his own eyes, and then slowly pulled up alongside so that he could confirm for himself, that's right, this is the guy. And the judge will tell you, you will gather the facts from the totality of the circumstances. Did they have a reasonable and probable cause to believe that this was the guy? And you can know, and the judge will tell you, that you gather that from every sense that you have. Your hearing, your sight, your sense of what's going on around you. Certainty, though, is a way higher standard than what you even need to find in this case. Certainty was way more knowledge than they needed to detain Ahmaud Arbery to execute a citizen's arrest. And that was Greg McMichael's intent. He said it from the very beginning. He was asked by the investigator, Parker Marcy testified to you, what was your intent had he stopped? And he said, as clear as a bell, hold him for the police so that he could be arrested. The judge will charge you that a private citizen can effectuate an arrest, detaining someone for the police to arrive if a crime happens within his knowledge, there's the other one, or his immediate presence. Thanks, Jason. I appreciate it. So here's what you have to know that you haven't yet heard from the state. There are no magic words that are required. The court will tell you there's nothing special you have to say to be effectuating a citizen's arrest. There's nothing special you can't say while effectuating a citizen's arrest. If it happens within your knowledge or immediate presence, then you can effectuate a citizen's arrest. And criminal trespass, the court will tell you, going on someone's property without the authority and for an unlawful purpose is a crime, the misdemeanor offense of citizen's arrest. And again, what you haven't heard from the state and got some misdirection about, there's no requirement, Judge Walmsley will tell you, for a posting of a no trespassing sign. There's no requirement that any officer execute this trespass warning. It's your place, and people should stay off it. We don't need to be telling people ahead of time and giving them warnings if you don't want to. And he'll also charge you that a private citizen can effectuate an arrest detaining someone for the goal of holding them for the police if he has reasonable grounds of suspicion to believe that a suspect is fleeing or attempting to flee from a felony. Burglary is a felony. Entering a dwelling place without authority with the intent to commit a theft in there. Not an actual theft, but the reason, the mindset for going into a place that's not yours. So how do you know that if there wasn't actually a theft? Judge Walmsley will tell you. The law will allow you to infer an intent to steal. If there's an unlawful entry, meaning crossing into a place that's not yours, a place where valuables are stored, and you heard testimony that plenty of valuables were stored at 220 Satilla Drive, with no other apparent motive for being there. That means every single time Ahmaud Arbery goes into that house, he is committing a burglary. But you hardly needed a jury instruction to tell you that. Coming into someone else's house at night, where it's pitch dark, repeatedly, even after you've been run off, into a place where an offshore boat is holding expensive equipment. The intruder comes in, and sometime after that intruder has left, your stuff is gone. Reasonable grounds of suspicion is nothing more than probable cause. And probable cause, as Mr. Sheffield and the court will tell you, are facts necessary to establish a probability, more likely than not. It's less than certainty, but it's more than mere suspicion. So think of it this way. If Officer Rash had been on one of his patrols in Satilla Shores on February 23rd at about 1:08 p.m., and as he turned onto Satilla Drive, he saw Matt Albenze, who he'd already met, standing in front of 220 Satilla Drive, just signaling down that street. And down that street, hightailing it, is Ahmaud Arbery, the man that Officer Rash had seen on those video cameras over and over again. So if he saw and heard what these men did, he too would have had probable cause to arrest Ahmaud Arbery for the crime of burglary. There's no doubt he would have put on his sirens and tried to stop Ahmaud Arbery. And there's no doubt after the events of February 11th that Officer Rash would have had his gun at the ready and not taken any chances. And I suspect in your minds, there would be no doubt that Ahmaud Arbery would have known exactly why he was being chased. Because there can be little doubt as well that Ahmaud Arbery knew exactly why the McMichaels were trying to detain him on February 23rd. The truth of life is that it's very complicated. A beautiful teenager with a broad smile and a crooked baseball cap can go astray. He can deteriorate and lose his way. And years later, he can end up creeping into a home that is not his own and running away instead of facing the consequences, acting erratically when approached and making terrible, unexpected, illogical choices. But a mother's love doesn't fade from that beautiful boy in the ball cap to the young intruder. And sadly, no verdict can change the grief of that future not realized. The hope that he could have turned himself around. Because all we can guess about the young man is that his teenage years were full of promise, but his early 20s just led him in the wrong direction. The facts presented in this trial bear no resemblance to the story that the state told you in opening statement. A 25-year-old who met a brutal death after being chased and killed by residents of a neighborhood who wanted nothing more than to murder him for having the audacity to jog in their neighborhood. Not a single piece of evidence that's been presented to you in this entire trial supports such a hateful and gruesome set of circumstances. Turning Ahmaud Arbery into a victim after the choices that he made does not reflect the reality of what brought Ahmaud Arbery to Satilla Shores in his khaki shorts with no socks to cover his long, dirty toenails. There were two sets of decision makers on February 23rd. It is not just the McMichaels decisions that led to this tragedy. And it is a tragedy. I see it in your faces, and I have felt it in mine. A young life lost, grieving parents. Greg and Travis didn't have to do anything on February 23rd. Greg could have looked up from his boat cushions, saw Ahmaud Arbery run past, and shrug his shoulders. Maybe call 911, maybe call Officer Rash, maybe text Diego Perez, and the fear and the frustration of this neighborhood would continue. But Greg McMichael's driveway decision wasn't the only decision that set this tragedy in motion. Ahmaud Arbery was not an innocent victim plundering through Larry English's house on February 23rd, just as he wasn't an innocent victim all the other nights, like October 25th, or November 18th, or December 15th, or February 11th. Is he the person responsible for stealing Larry English's expensive boat equipment? I don't know. We don't know. No one investigated that. But can anyone reasonably believe that Ahmaud Arbery was just doing a looky-loo on those nights in what has been described and shown to you as a home drenched in absolute darkness? The judge will instruct you that you must use common sense and reason. Common sense and reason. There was no legitimate reason for Ahmaud Arbery to be plundering through Larry English's house those 4 nights, and again on the afternoon of February 23rd. Ahmaud didn't live there. He didn't work there. He didn't have friends there. He didn't have a girlfriend there. He wasn't hanging out with a friend in that neighborhood who was a friend of a friend. He didn't jog through that neighborhood. He was a recurring nighttime intruder, and that is frightening and unsettling. A looky-loo in an open, unsecured construction site. Why did we have to withstand that drumbeat? Why? Let's clear a few things up. The judge will charge you that for burglary purposes, a dwelling is any structure that is intended for residential use. It makes no difference if it's occupied, being built, under construction, unoccupied, or vacant. And that only makes sense. How could you ever build a home if it wasn't really yours to protect until it was done? For that matter, how could you ever expect your stuff to be safe when your teenager forgets to close the garage door? Really, with all the important law to consider, why the misdirection? Why? And why the insensitivity to the neighbors of Satilla Shores? It's only a looky-loo when it isn't your neighborhood. It's only an open, unsecured construction site when it's not the building of your dream home, hastened by this impending fatal illness of Larry English's. It's only a property crime when you're not Subi Lawrence, across the street from that house, living alone, trying to raise 3 rambunctious boys, and you can't even let them outside to play. It's only a property crime if you're not Diego and Brooke Perez, trying to raise 3 little girls safely next door to 220 Satilla Drive. No one but Ahmaud Arbery made the decision to repeatedly and unlawfully enter into that house over and over again. No one but Ahmaud Arbery made the decision to run like the wind when the police car responded to the calls from the owner and the neighbors. No one but Ahmaud Arbery made the decision to either reach for or certainly give the very real impression that he was reaching for a handgun on February 11th, and then to yet again run away when the police arrived. And no one but Ahmaud Arbery made the decision not to stop when Travis's truck rolled up beside him, to wait, to tell the police what he was doing there, or just plain run away into the woods, or in the culverts that you'll see all over the state's evidence, or the open yards or the open garages, or yell the word help, or just keep going right, straight down Satilla Drive, right into Officer Minshew's patrol car. I realize, probably more than any of you, what an incredibly unpopular thing that is to say. But in a courtroom, with Greg McMichael facing the charge of murder, somebody's got to say it. And believe me, I'm proud to be the one to say it. Not to cause harm, not to cause pain, but because the truth in this place is really all that matters. Be very clear, be very clear. No one is saying that Ahmaud Arbery deserved to die for whatever it was he was doing inside 220 Satilla Drive, because that's not why he died. He died because for whatever inexplicable, illogical reason, instead of staying where he was, whatever overwhelming reason he had to avoid being captured that day and arrested by the police, he chose to fight. He chose to fight. To, without any sense of reason, to run at a man wielding a shotgun, leaving him with no other alternative but to be placed in the position of killing another human being. Greg McMichael had probable cause through all that he saw, all that he heard, all that he knew, to believe reasonably that Ahmaud Arbery had committed a crime and that he was fleeing from it yet again. If the state hasn't removed every doubt, every single reasonable, logical doubt in your mind that Greg McMichael was attempting a citizen's arrest, attempting to simply detain Ahmaud Arbery for the police on February 23rd, then you have reached your verdict, ladies and gentlemen, on counts 2 through 9. If they can't strip you of any reason to doubt the evidence that's been presented to you on citizen's arrest, but if they have left you wanting to know more, if they have left you wanting to inquire into the next steps of these offenses, there are still more steps. One of those is causation. How any of the other acts in counts 2 through 9, other than the actual shooting of Ahmaud Arbery, could have been the direct cause of Ahmaud Arbery's death, or that it would have played a substantial and necessary part in causing the death. You would have to find that the goal of trying to detain Ahmaud Arbery for the police without using any excessive force, no fists, no discharge of the weapon, before that left turn attack on Travis, then the case is over yet again on counts 2 through 9. It would have to be not guilty because there would have been no causation between the counts that don't involve the actual discharge of that firearm. And then if you wanted to go one further step, you would have to ask yourself about Greg's role in all of this while riding in the back of the pickup truck. As a party to the crime, the state would have to prove to you that that Gregory McMichael intentionally helped in the commission of the shooting, or advised, encouraged, hired, counseled, or procured Travis McMichael to shoot Ahmaud Arbery as he was on the phone with 911 shouting the word no. Without proof beyond a reasonable doubt of all of those pieces, all of those elements, the state simply has not met their case. When I sit down, I get no more chance to speak with you, and that's a tough thing for me. I have to know that the state gets the last word. So given the state's opening and some of their cross-examination of witnesses, despite how careful I know you all were with your notepads and pens, with your attention, with your focus, I have to raise a few more things to make sure you notice them, because the stakes are so incredibly high. Ms. Dunikoski told you in her initial closing argument she was afraid that we'd persuade you of the things that we're sharing with you about the state's case. I'm afraid that she's going to cherry pick. Cherry picking is this: it's choosing and taking only the most beneficial items from all that's been provided to you and trying to turn that into a fact. Don't look over there at all the rest of the stuff. Just look at these beautiful cherries I've picked. Context determines meaning. Stop, or I'll blow your MFing head off. You heard that from opening statement, and you heard it all the way through the trial. Cross-examination. Versus the actual reality that I think I saw you all write down of what Greg McMichael told Parker Marcy and what the investigators testified about what it really meant and when it really was supposed to have happened. Greg McMichael said that horrible sentence, or something. Stop, he said to the investigator. I said to him, stop, or I'll blow your MFing head off, or something. You didn't hear or something. But most importantly, what we now know is that Greg McMichael thought, in the panic and adrenaline and fear and of that horrible situation, he thought that's what he said at the very end of this encounter. Mr. Hogue cross-examined every witness who was with Greg McMichael when he shared that piece of information. The DA wants to make you think, by cherry picking, that Greg McMichael said that anywhere, anytime, over and over, all through, anywhere through the pathway. But what those witnesses, those investigators and officers told you is that Greg McMichael was talking about the final encounter. Officer Brandeberry was asked, when did you understand he was telling you he said that? And Officer Brandeberry said, he's talking about the final encounter on Holmes Road. Yes, that's my understanding. Parker Marcy was asked, when would that have occurred? Would that have occurred, giving the context of the full statement, which because of the laws in this courtroom and around the state of Georgia, you cannot have all of the statement read to you. So there had to be context. And that gets a little dicey. And that's why you have to be extra careful when you're sharing that information with a jury. So Mr. Hogue cross-examined those officers to say, let's draw down on when that was supposed to have happened. He said it was supposed to have happened at the final confrontation. The same place where Greg's on the phone with 911? Yes, that's what he thought he said. So whatever he said on 911, Mr. Hogue asked the investigator, would that be the most accurate way of knowing what he really said? And that investigator, just like all of you, would say, of course. whatever you heard, whatever the state presented in the 911 call, whatever you can listen to again, bears no resemblance to what Greg McMichael, after a stroke, and the panic and the fear and the sadness of those moments when he was interviewed, thought that he said on the 911 call. You are the decider of the facts. You're the ones that are going to have to make the decision about what's true and what's not true about this case. Jason Sheffield said the word red herring, so I went ahead and looked it up. I've always heard that phrase, and the definition is something that's intended to be misleading or distracting. So I'm going to tell you I've got one more concern before I sit down. And that is, and I could be completely wrong about this, but I'm concerned about it, so I want to share it with you since I can't come back up in case my suspicions are correct. I'm afraid of why the state kept introducing into evidence still shots of Greg McMichael with various people at the scene. I noted them in the beginning, thinking it wasn't any big deal. I take down a lot of notes, like you all do. And then I kept seeing a pattern. And again, Ms. Dunikoski, I could be completely wrong about this, but I'm concerned that Ms. Dunikoski is now digging so deep to make this case that she's going to suggest to you that Greg McMichael was on that scene manipulating testimony and evidence. It seems kind of wild when you think that the whole event is on video and that the people that came in with that video said it hadn't been altered or changed in any way. And that Officer Minshew is there in seconds on the scene, and we see everything that's happening on his body cam. In fact, it was Travis and Greg who waved him down. But there's photos of Greg comforting his son. There's a photo of Greg McMichael after 30 years in law enforcement having a conversation with Captain Tom Jump. There's evidence that the film, Officer Minshew said, Roddy's got this on the film, and Greg was able to say, Travis, it's captured on film. There's a screenshot of Diego talking to Greg, even though Officer Adam Jackson, who testified, said, I spoke to Diego Perez. He said, I got some camera footage. You want it? And we got the security camera footage from Diego Perez through Adam Jackson, unadulterated, and presented to you. So I just have to say, thank goodness that as awful as those recordings are to hear and see, they reflect the truth of what happened, who did what, and why. And there is no way to suggest that there was any manipulation of evidence or testimony at the scene. So now it's time, very soon, probably not soon enough for you, but very soon, for you to deliberate and reach a verdict rendered by members of your community about an event that happened in your community. Glynn County, filled with communities that are filled with neighbors. Why did it take us 11 days to select you? Well, the media descended on this case. And unless, I think several of you said, unless you lived under a rock, you knew something about the case. Some facts that were accurate, some facts that were ridiculous, and some facts that were outright slanted for shock value. And we as humans do, we begin to form opinions when we begin to hear things that we believe could be facts. And then there's the social media, people posting arguments, comments, and opinions. And then with the algorithm of Facebook, you're going to get more and more of the same opinions and comments and opinions that are like the opinions that you seem to be interested in. And next thing you know, you think that these people's opinions are facts. And the other issue is this is a small county. Many of the jurors that were summoned knew the defendants. Many of the jurors that were summoned knew the Arbery's. Many of the jurors that were summoned knew people who were close to people who knew either one of them. And consistent with human nature, those folks had formed opinions. So why are you the 15 that remained? Because you were determined to be the people most likely to do what I submit to you is the impossible. To set aside opinions and beliefs you'd formed before you came into court, to set aside facts that you thought were accurate before you came to court, and to promise with your oath, hand to God, to base your verdict only on what you hear in this courtroom. It's kind of a ridiculous standard, but it's all we've got for these men to have their day in court. And we had to assess your honesty. We had to assess your candor, your truthfulness, that you would do what you said you would do. This incredible, awesome responsibility that you've been selected to undertake. Jury deliberations are not like a meeting. They're not like a business meeting where you're going to each put in your opinions and thoughts and reach an agreement, a little give and take. It's not like going to buy a car and you're dickering over the price. It's not even like the legislature when they're trying to come up with a budget. Hey, this is the stuff I really want in my packet, and this is the stuff I really want in my packet. I'll give up a little bit of this if you give up a little bit of that. That is not at all how jury deliberations work. Because you see, compromise has absolutely no place in the deliberative process. The judge will instruct you. Keep an open mind, talk with each other, consider each other's points of view. But the bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, is that each of you will form this verdict on your own. You are the gatekeepers of this jury process. You're the gatekeepers of the oath that you each took. If some of you feel strongly one way and others of you feel strongly the other way, keep talking, keep working. This is important. But you are not to give up any opinions you have, any thoughts and beliefs you have, just to get along or just to be unanimous. You are not to consider what the possible punishments just might be. You can't have the kind of conversation that says, well, you know, that malice murder, that is kind of ridiculous given the facts of this case. So let's just agree on that felony murder. That can't be that bad. It's got to be less than the malice murder. Or, you know, some of you really want felony murder and some of you really want not guilty. What if we just sort of meet in the middle with one of those ag assaults? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I encourage you, I beg you to slam on the brakes if you hear any conversations like that in the jury room. The only thing you're asking yourself is whether the state removed every logical reason for you to doubt that Greg McMichael had the requisite knowledge and intent to execute a citizen's arrest. And if that's the case, then not guilty is the only verdict you can reach. Because every count count in this indictment is so serious. And every single count in this indictment is life-changing for Greg McMichael. Your deliberations should be guided by the rule that the judge will give you. If in any way your minds are wavering, unsettled, unsatisfied, then that is a doubt of the law and you must acquit. You can't wake up in a couple of weeks from now and regret the decision you made because you can't take it back. The Constitution, our beautiful Constitution, demands no less than this certainty. The grandparents on golf carts in Satilla Shores, the kids on bikes in your neighborhood, the couples walking their dogs after dinner in our small town neighborhoods deserve no less. Greg McMichael is not a murderer. He's not guilty.
Thank you, counsel. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take let's take a 15-minute recess, and we'll continue with closing arguments. Again, do not discuss this case amongst yourselves until you've been instructed to do so by the court. Thank you.
Y'all, now, we got Mr. Golf coming up. And I can only imagine the thing that Mr. Golf is getting ready to say. Like my head is kind of hurting already. My ears are probably internally bleeding thinking about the things that Golf is getting ready to say. Because each of these defense attorneys has stood up here and victim blamed, and it bothers me. Because at the end of the day, Ahmaud Arbery was a human. He had every right to jog, run, or wherever he wanted and be wherever he wanted to be. He was under no obligation to stop for anybody who pulled up beside him. And it is super unfortunate what the hell happened to him. And I'm honestly glad that we know that these suckers are behind bars for life because they absolutely deserve it. Absolutely. So with that being said, y'all, we are going to end our stream for today. We're gonna pick back up on golf this afternoon. I gotta go to the dentist, y'all. You know I chipped that tooth. So I don't want us to start golf and then we'll have to stop. So we're at our natural stopping point just for this stream. But I'll be back in about an hour or two. And we will listen to golf, pick us off before we wrap up closing arguments for the day. So if you haven't done so already, I know, girl, chip my tooth. I was like, I've been distraught. Like I haven't even pushed any content for real, Chloe. Like it's just been, it's been a bad little week for me. I'm not even gonna lie. Yeah, we're gonna pick back up this afternoon. I'll be back on at 2 Central. So the golf call, yeah. I'll be back at 2 Central. So I think that's 3 Eastern. I'll be back around that time. But if you haven't done so already, just make sure you subscribe and you hit the notification button so that you can come back, so that you know when I go back live. So that way you can come back and rejoin us. It's just you take a deep breath, go have some lunch and come on back. All right. I'll see you in a little bit.